Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I don't know why I picked that particular cabin. Maybe it was the remoteness, or the idea of disappearing for a while. After everything that happened with work, after the fight with Olivia, I needed to be alone. No buzzing phone, no laptop, just the trees, the quiet, and maybe a bottle of whiskey or two. It was an off-grid place deep in the northern Oregon woods, listed on some obscure site that catered to digital detox retreats. The photos showed a small log cabin with a wraparound porch, nestled between pine trees that reach high enough to stab the sky. No neighbors for miles. The host sent me coordinates and a warning. No cell signal. Bring supplies. Watch out for coyotes and bears. He didn't mention the screaming. I got there around noon, just as the fog was beginning to rise off the forest floor. The air smelled like wet earth and sap. I stepped out of my Jeep and stood in the silence. Not a single bird chirped, just wind rustling the pine needles like dry whispers. I brushed it off. City life had numbed me to the strange beauty of silence. Inside, the cabin was cleaner than expected. Rustic but cozy. A single bed, a rocking chair, a fireplace, a small kitchen area with a wood-burning stove. There was even a journal on the table, maybe from previous guests. I flipped through it. A few entries about hikes, stars, one weird sketch of a screaming face in the margin. No name, no date, just a mouth wide open, scribbled like the artist's hand had been shaking. That night, I drank half the bottle and fell asleep in front of the fireplace. At exactly 2:13 a.m., I woke up to the sound of a scream. A woman's scream. High-pitched, raw, like her throat was ripping open with every note. It came from deep in the woods. I sat bolt upright, heart slamming in my chest. I grabbed a flashlight and went out, barefoot and stumbling across the porch. The beam of light cut through the trees, but there was nothing, just darkness and a strange coldness that seemed to rise from the ground itself. I stood there for a full minute, shivering. The scream didn't come again. Eventually, I convinced myself it was a dream. Maybe a fox. Maybe my mind playing tricks. I went back in, locked the door, and lay in bed with the flashlight still clutched in my hand. The next morning, I laughed it off, told myself I needed to chill out. I made some eggs, read a book, tried to hike a bit, but couldn't stop thinking about that sound. The second night, I made sure to stay sober. I wanted to be sure if it happened again, I'd remember it clearly. It did. Same time, 2:13 a.m. Same scream, but this time, it was closer. It sounded like she was just beyond the tree line. I didn't go outside. I couldn't move. My legs were frozen, my fingers locked around the flashlight. The scream died off slowly, like it was being dragged away. I stayed up until the sky turned gray. The next day, I walked to where I thought the scream had come from. I found broken branches, a patch of disturbed earth, and a shoe. A muddy, old running shoe with torn laces. Women's size, maybe. I didn't touch it. That night, I dragged the couch in front of the door and jammed a kitchen knife under my pillow. The third night, I didn't sleep. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the scream pierced the night like a siren. But this time, there was something worse, a second sound. Footsteps, not heavy like a bear. Light, careful, Human. They crunched across the porch. Then, a knock on the door. 3 slow knocks. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. After a few minutes, the knock stopped. I stayed in that position, curled under a blanket on the couch, knife in hand, until the morning sun crept through the windows. I want to leave. I packed my bag, threw everything in the Jeep, and started down the narrow dirt road. But after a few miles, a massive pine tree blocked the path. Freshly fallen, too big to move. No chainsaw, no signal. I reversed back to the cabin, and that's when I saw the prints. Muddy, barefoot prints on the porch, leading from the edge of the woods right up to my window. There was something else, something that made my blood run ice cold. On the side of the cabin, carved deep into the wood in jagged letters, were the words, "Stop ignoring me." I stood there, staring, heart thumping in my ears. I felt something watching me, not from the trees, from inside. I bolted. I didn't care about the tree anymore. I rammed my Jeep off the trail and through the forest, bouncing over rocks, scraping against branches, tearing up everything in my path until I hit pavement. I didn't stop driving until I saw other cars again. Civilization. A week later, I tried to find the listing online. It was gone. I called the host number. It rang twice, then picked up. No greeting. Just a looped recording of a voice I didn't recognize. A calm male voice, repeating over and over. She doesn't like being alone. She doesn't like being alone. She doesn't like being alone. I hung up. Sometimes, late at night, I wake up at exactly 2:13 a.m., sweating, listening, not sure if I'll hear her scream again. But I know if I ever do, I won't go to the window, because I know she's still out there, and she knows I heard her. Story 2. I rented the cabin to escape. It wasn't just a weekend getaway. It was supposed to be a full cleanse. I'd just gone through a messy breakup. One of those slow, painful kinds that turns your stomach sour and makes you question everything. I needed space, solitude, silence, and the lodge in the Catskills promised all 3. It was beautiful, tucked between dense trees and built almost entirely out of pine wood. The kind of place you'd see on a postcard or in one of those digital detox ads. It smelled like old timber and smoke. There was a soft creak in the floorboards when you walked, the kind that reminded you of childhood, like visiting your grandparents' house. Cozy, familiar, but something was missing. It took me a few hours to realize there were no mirrors. None in the bathroom, none in the bedroom, not a single one above the sink, where you'd expect to see a fogged-up rectangle waiting to reflect your sleepy face. Not even a small hand mirror. I searched everywhere. All I found was smooth wood and blank, faded walls. I asked the owner about it when he dropped off extra firewood that afternoon. "Hey," I said, laughing nervously. "Did someone steal all the mirrors?" Or he didn't laugh back. He looked at me for a moment too long before saying, "It's intentional." "What?" But he was already walking away, boots crunching against the gravel path. He raised one hand lazily in the air like he'd answered all he was going to. That night, I sat in the living room, sipping tea and staring out the wide front window. The stars were out, clear as I'd ever seen. My breath fogged slightly on the glass. That's when I noticed my reflection, only it didn't feel like mine. It looked like me, same brown hoodie, same hair twisted into a bun, but the face was wrong. The smile was too wide. My real lips were still straight. The reflection grinned. I blinked, and it stopped. My reflection was normal again. Chalked it up to being tired, my mind playing tricks. I laughed at myself and went to bed. The next night, it happened again. This time, the reflection didn't just smile. It moved after I did. A second too late. A delayed version of me. I raised my hand slowly, testing it, like you'd test whether a snake was sleeping, and the reflection lagged. For one full second, my hand was raised, and the one in the glass was still down. And then it caught up. That grin again. Wider this time. Too wide. The teeth, too many. I threw the blanket over the window and turned on every light in the cabin. I couldn't sleep. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind felt like breathing. Around 3 a.m., I wandered the house like a ghost, checking doors and windows. That's when I noticed one of the floorboards in the bedroom was loose, just barely, sticking up at the corner like it was pried open and never settled back. Curious, or maybe just desperate to distract myself, I knelt down and pulled it free. And there it was, a mirror, oval-shaped, old and dusty, like something pulled out of an attic. It had a crack running down one side in spots where the silver backing had decayed into black. I should have put it back, should have nailed the floorboard shut and never touched it again. But I looked. The room behind me was the same. Bed, lamp, curtains swaying slightly. My own face, pale and shaking. But there was someone else. A woman, standing behind me, inches away, so pale she looked carved out of wax. Lips stretched back in that same grin I'd seen in the window. Eyes black, not just dark, empty, as if someone had scooped the soul out of them and left only the shell. She didn't move, but I could feel her breathing. I turned, heart hammering. No one. I looked back at the mirror, and she reached out. Her hand in the reflection moved toward my neck, fingers long like twigs. Cold. I screamed and dropped the mirror. It didn't shatter. I grabbed it and hurled it into the fireplace. It cracked, hissed, and then caught flame like it was made of paper. The fire roared high, too high for a normal blaze. Then it snapped back to normal. Gone. I didn't sleep. Just sat on the porch with my car keys gripped in one hand, staring at the trees until the sky turned gray. At sunrise, I packed up and left. I didn't even tell the owner. Just drove down the mountain like a madman, glancing in the rear view every 10 seconds, afraid she'd be sitting in the back seat. 3 hours later, when I finally got back in a service range, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. No name, just the text. You shouldn't have looked for it. She's attached now. I blocked the number immediately. Threw my phone out the window somewhere past Albany. But sometimes, late at night, I see her in other reflections. In shop windows. In the water of a sink. In the screen of my phone before it powers off. She's always grinning. And sometimes, just sometimes, she moves before I do. Story 3. I used to be a land surveyor. It's not a glamorous job, but it's quiet, honest work. Long drives, long hikes, a thermos of bad coffee, and the sound of your own boots on pine needles. Some people crave company. I always preferred solitude. That's probably why they sent me to Lot 47, deep in the state forest. Unclaimed land. Forgotten. They told me it hadn't been registered to anyone since the 1980s. A shack or maybe a hunter's cabin was supposedly still out there. My job was to locate it, mark the coordinates, and take photos for the land office. In and out, 2 days max. I drove 5 hours out and parked where the forest road ended. From there, it was me, my backpack, a flashlight, and a half-crumpled topographic map from the 70s. The forest felt wrong. Still, like the trees were holding their breath. Even the birds seemed hesitant to sing. I hiked for 4 hours before I found it. The cabin. It stood crookedly in a clearing, like it had just risen out of the earth and hadn't fully decided whether it wanted to stay. With shingles missing, one shutter dangling loose, but the front door was shut tight, and the chimney had no rot. Someone, sometime, had built it well. I stepped inside and immediately felt like I had walked into a memory. The air was thick with dust, but everything was in place. Dishes on the table, dry and cracked, like they'd been waiting for dinner that never came. Clothes still hanging in the bedroom closet. Men's flannel shirts, a woman's nightgown, a little boy's raincoat. A photo set on the wall above the fireplace. For people, a man, a woman, 2 children, and the man looked exactly like me. I don't mean a vague resemblance. I mean the jaw, the eyes, the way the hair curled over the ear. I could have been looking at a photo of myself, just older, wearier, and smiling like he belonged there. I stared at it for a long time, tried to laugh it off. Maybe the mind sees what it wants to see. Maybe we all have doppelgangers out there, right? I took a few pictures on my phone and radioed back to confirm I found it. Then night fell. I built a small fire in the old stone pit out front. I didn't plan to sleep inside, not after that photo. But something about the air shifted after dark. The forest groaned. The wind didn't feel natural. It felt like breath on the back of my neck. Just after midnight, I heard a soft crackle behind me. The radio. It was on, but I'd taken the batteries out earlier, just to be safe. It had no power, yet there was, glowing faintly, speaker buzzing, and then a voice came through. A child's voice. Sweet, rhythmic, like a nursery rhyme whispered too close to the ear. 1, 2. He's coming for you. The fire hissed and shrank. 3, 4. He's at the door. I stood frozen. The voice cut off. Silence. Then, knock, 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 from inside the cabin. Not the front door. The inside. Like someone was knocking from inside the walls. I ran, bolted into the trees, heart hammering so hard I thought it would shake loose from my ribs. My GPS wouldn't work. The compass spun like it was drunk. Every time I tried to walk straight, I ended up back at the same clearing, the same damn cabin, like the woods were folding in on themselves. I didn't sleep. I sat against a tree and waited for the sun. When morning finally broke, the forest changed again. Birds chirped. The wind rustled naturally. I thought maybe I had hallucinated it all. Then I saw him, a man standing at the tree line, tall, still, wearing the same flannel shirt I'd seen in the closet. He was holding something in his hand, a photo. I stepped closer, and my legs turned cold. The photo showed the same family of 4, same living room, same wall, but this time I was sitting at a table, smiling, my hand resting on the shoulder of the boy. I never took that photo. I never sat there. Before I could react, everything went black. Just gone. I woke up in my own bed. No idea how I got home. No car. No gear, nothing. Just my phone, still in my pocket. The photos I took of the cabin were gone. All except one. The picture of the family. Except now I was in it. Clear as day. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've taken dozens of photos. My sister's wedding, a beach trip, even a selfie at a crowded cafe downtown. And in every single one of them, in the background, through a window, behind a tree, the cabin is there, waiting. And I swear, each time I look at a new photo, it's getting closer.